welcome everybody, and thank you so much for coming to today's session. Stay secure, stay confident, cyber protection for your retirement lifestyle. So this is something we've been having conversations with people kind of in the community and then a lot of our clients. And while maybe not entirely kind of retirement focused or income stream wise or accumulation, those types of things when it comes to your retirement picture, we do think that this is super important. So retirement for most people should be a time to enjoy your freedom that you've earned, not worry about those online threats or anything like that. However, and kind of Norman will go into detail here, but the reality is the cyber criminals are increasingly targeting retirees. So if that's a phishing scam, identity theft, things like that. So today we're going to be breaking down some practical things to implement education for your, for safeguarding your savings or those retirement years. So by the end of today, you should feel confident about those threats that you see online. You see at the bottom right here that is our phone number. So if you guys have any questions at any time, please text in to that number. Also, if you're coming into today's Zoom outside of maybe Oregon or California or anywhere, just text us where you're coming in from. It's always fun to see where those people are attending from. So excited to have today's session. So my name is Ethan Fischel. I'm a financial advisor here with Financial Freedom. I've been with the team going on 4 years now. California born, but went to school up here in Oregon, went to Willamette, got my MBA here in finance. And our passion is just to help those either in that accumulation phase or in those retirement years. And I'm welcomed here by Norman as well, who's also going to go into a little detail about himself.
Thanks, Ethan, and thanks everyone for having me today. Like Ethan said, my name is Norman. Currently work here at LPL Financial as a cybersecurity analyst. I've been here about 4.5 years now, and I've dedicated a lot of my time training not just advisors, but also clients alike, spreading awareness on how to protect themselves from cyber scams and threats. I believe really through teaching these practical tips, anyone can really adopt and bring awareness to others the different tactics that these threat actors employ. And so really in hopes to help prevent us from all becoming victims.
Yeah, well said. So, who is Financial Freedom Wealth Management Group? Well, we've been established for 25 years now. So, founded back in 2001. We're a comprehensive wealth management and financial advisory firm. And we always love to kind of show what our pursuit is, and that's to be the nation's, most caring financial advising team, guiding you, your loved ones, and your legacy towards lasting financial independence and a life of fulfillment. You'll also see down below who we serve. So these are just examples, maybe 3 different examples of who we serve, but we do take pride in helping you wherever you are in your life. So here's a picture of us on the right with some of our, service team and advisors. Again, like I stated, we've been established for 25 years now. We help clients in 46 states across the country. And we have a couple awards too that we're proud of. Forbes Best in State Wealth Advisors. Our CEO's Barron's Top 1,200 Financial Advisors in America, and internally ranked a best place to work for financial advisors. So yeah, again, if you guys have any questions as we go through, I'll kind of kick it off to Norman here. Please text that number. If we don't get to it at the end, we'll be able to just text you offline. So thanks, everyone.
Cool. Well, thanks, Ethan, and thanks again, everyone. Just to put a little context, right? I'm an 80s kid, but really I'm kind of thinking about the 90s here. I was in my early teens, console games still dominated the market. I used to download music and even burn CDs because that was the thing. But again, back in those times, things were much simpler. You used to have keys to just get into your house and your car, keys for your doors and your locks, and really had the ability to easily go into a physical store, right, to rent movies, buy music, maybe even go to the department store to visit for the holidays. We don't really see much of that anymore, as most things now, they all kind of are hosted by digital storefronts. And the today that Marty McFly and Doc Brown from Back to the Future um, wasn't exactly what they envisioned for 2015, let alone 2026, right? Yes, we got those 3D holograms. We had a prototype for self-lacing shoes, but the hoverboard concept, we're not quite there yet. But I think what's cool about today is that we're starting to see another technology shift, just like we saw in tech and internet boom back in the 90s and 2000s, but this time with AI. Now, AI isn't a new thing, but just like all good that can come from it, their actors are now also using it to make scams and fraud more difficult to sniff out. So at least for today's webinar, my goal, just like what Ethan said at the top of the call, is to give some of those practical tips to help better train your gut feeling or those spidey senses that you have. Just a disclaimer, the information presented today is guided by industry best practices. And if you do have any questions, go ahead and please text the team or connect with one of the financial professionals at FFWMG to have a deeper conversation. On the agenda, I'll briefly just define cybersecurity and talk about how LPL Financial works with FFWMG to protect your information. We'll review a few common cyber scams that we see daily. We'll provide some tips to consider when securing accounts and devices, and then we'll end with some Q&A. Now, for alignment, when we look at and define cybersecurity, we define it as the ability to protect against unauthorized access to sensitive information or assets. Our data has always been really valuable, but by connecting everything to the internet nowadays, threat actors now are seeking out these easy opportunities to steal the data, either for use for themselves or to sell to a secondary bad actor on the dark market or on the black market. It's good to get context to really who's targeting us as well. At least on the bottom two on the right-hand side there, terrorism, warfare, that doesn't apply to us because these are typically state-sponsored bad actors or extremist groups with the agenda. The bad actors that we're kind of focused on today are the ones that are typically coming for that quick financial payday, looking for notoriety or some extortion or revenge. Now, if we look at the big picture, right, the cyber threat landscape has evolved a lot since the 80s and 90s, right? When the internet was born, when the first PC was introduced, so on and so forth. One that recently personally affected me, and maybe even your kids or your grandkids, in late 2024, PowerSchools, a major US K through 12 information system management provider, suffered a data breach of over 60 million students. These are kind of like, the ones that attend the school, and about 10 million of those educators exposing sensitive information, such as date of birth, social security number, and limited medical data, just to name a few. Yes, my child was identified as one of those affected. So you can imagine, right? Back in the day, when it came to social security numbers for your children, that wasn't something that we always monitor. So you can imagine now with that sensitive information now stolen on the dark web, well, bad actors either now open new lines of credit for themselves, or they can get more sophisticated, sell that info so others can create fake identities or personas. Again, because that social security number, even their credit, is not typically something that we monitor, that activity can go undetected for some time. As we grow up, as we start adulting more, bad actors start targeting things that surround our everyday lives. So whether it's for personal, for business, by taking over accounts or even compromising the third-party vendors that we're working with or that we do business with, they abuse the trust relationships that eventually generally lead to fraud. Now, when we are nearing retirement or at retirement, that's probably when we're potentially at our wealthiest, right? Bad actors then use or chain multiple scams or tactics together, just like the ones that you see on the screen here, doing whatever it takes to really trick us or to defraud us. Now, when it comes to keeping your information safe, when it comes to you, we understand that these are your accounts, and within them are your sensitive information and your assets. Now, LPL works hand in hand with Financial Freedom Wealth to ensure your information is protected by implementing data security safeguards and controls. Now, when it comes to Financial Freedom Wealth, think of us as their cybersecurity consultants. Personally, I've worked with the office and developed a really great relationship with them to become their trusted cybersecurity partner, where we go ahead and provide them with annual cybersecurity training to recognizing cyber threats, as well as give them consultations on reducing cyber risk in their offices. Your advisors are here to help achieve your financial goals. So as LPL Financial, highly recommends having you reach out and have open conversations with your advisor team whenever you're considering moving large sums of money, right? Through their industry experiences, as well as training, they are a great partner that you can always rely on to help identify potential red flags if something is going awry there. At least those that don't know about LPL Financial, just a little history. We are a Fortune 500 company and recognized as the largest independent broker-dealer in the United States, managing over $2.4 trillion assets under management, servicing over 32,000 advisors and 1,200 institutions, where LPL is not just the broker-dealer or the custodial services provided. We also do compliance, operational, and back office support for our advisors so they can continue to focus on what matters most, which is you. Now, at least within our LPL Financials technology team, in 2025, we've invested over $500 million in our cybersecurity team specifically, right? Our budget has grown 2x since 2023, going up to 65 million this year. This is just a continued show of commitment to continue to invest in our infrastructure for both security and stability. With over 160 dedicated cyber staff, we're poised to protect against cyber threats 24/7, 365 days a year, by using modern security tools and supported by having a robust cyber insurance policy.
Yeah, Norman, I can shed a light too on kind of how we assist our clientele. The partnership that we have with LPL is great, and even just the education piece that we can put on here today is one of those features. And again, at the top, I didn't mention, but this is recorded. So if you guys need to leave at any time, come back. We will be sending that out to you. So don't feel bad if you miss something. This will be also uploaded onto the website. So the education will be there forever for you, or if you want to send it to anybody that you may know. On top of the education piece too, anytime somebody calls in or makes a request in their accounts, we're always asking them security questions to make sure that it is that person that we're speaking with. And those security questions also update over time. So it's not the same thing you hear time and time again. I would also say too, we get to really know our clients, right? So if we get a call in from somebody and it's maybe a little out of character for them to make such a big request or, add an additional bank, things like that, we really want to make sure that we have a trusted contact on file just as a secondary source to confirm, is this something that makes sense for them to do? So again, our goal is really simple. And as we go through this today, you'll really see something that we really want to highlight, and that being taking a step back, slowing down sometimes, making sure that, we're doing the right thing. So thanks, Norman.
Now, if you're interested in this type of content and you want to read more, we definitely have some articles on our public LPL.com page. Just go to LPL.com and then navigate to the top under individual investors. There's a section called Investment Essentials. You'll find technology and cybersecurity. Also on the LPL.com page, we do recognize the critical role that cybersecurity plays. And so our commitment to our advisors and their clients is exactly what you see there on the screen. LPL will reimburse you for 100% of realized losses in your impacted LPL accounts, which were incurred directly as a result of unauthorized access to an LPL system. Just to break it down, if it is something that occurs to our systems, right, a bad actor somehow breaches our networks, our programs and whatnot, that is an LPL problem. We will go ahead and reimburse you 100%. We do encourage you to review those guarantee in full detail. Again, just go to Google, just search LPL cyber fraud guarantee, and it'll take you straight to that page. So when we're talking about cyber scams, I just want you to kind of briefly think, like, what do you think is the leading method of attack used to steal data or breach networks? Now, if you guessed phishing, smishing, vishing, if you've ever heard of those terms, you're partially correct. Where I was really trying to go, I think when we're boiling down all of these types of scams, it's really social engineering. So at least social engineering, when we define it, it's the psychological manipulation of people to exploit human emotions to perform actions that's not in their best interest. Now, phishing, smishing, vishing, yes, they are the most common attack vectors that bad actors choose. And we'll go ahead and review a few examples in the next few slides. Briefly, phishing is just the #1 preferred method. At the end of the day, it's a numbers game where these threat actors send thousands upon tens of thousands or 100,000 emails to malicious emails to unsuspecting people. And all they're looking for, if they could get 1% or 0.5% of that, let's just say out of 100,000 people, well, that's still 500 to 1,000 people that could potentially become victims. And if they end up sending money or something like that, boom, there you go, instant payday. When it comes to smishing, right, if you kind of think about it, well, what better way is there to get in your face than a device that's always in your face most of the day or most of the time? By sending these malicious text messages, this is where we've always been most attuned to message people back. So it's almost like a behavioral conditioning that it's almost like we have to respond back. And we'll talk more about that later. And then vishing, another great way to hack the human directly, whether it's on the phone or through some virtual meeting, we just have to become more cautious. And again, we'll talk a little bit shortly. So before we move on to actually sharing the examples, I just want to say, hey, take 9. And by this, I mean, well, really when trying to research, like, how could I make cybersecurity tips simpler to understand? I stumbled across a website called pausetake9.org. And this is the place where it talks about cybersecurity best practices, but really highlights the power of the pause. So I want you to kind of keep these 5 items in mind as we review the next couple of cyber scams, because really these are kind of like the telltale signs that it's like, hey, this doesn't feel right, right? So when we're thinking about these scams too, it's like, well, it shouldn't really take you longer than 9 seconds, because social engineering requires you to devote or have more dwell time to sink its teeth into work. They're really looking to manipulate those emotions, exploit our human flaws to perform something, again, not in our best interest. So that means like, hey, if I receive a message that's unsolicited, right? Hey, that should be already that, cautious, right? It's something that automatically triggers emotions, right? It uses the words of urgency. Hey, you need to take action immediately, so on and so forth. Big red flags, right? Especially when it comes to payment, wiring, unconventional forms of payment, another huge red flag. And then if they're asking you to verify information that's sensitive, such as the last 4 digits of your social security number, date of birth, or anything like that, again, something to really consider and think about. So here's the easy example of what we call phishing. And phishing is just, again, those malicious emails. So what I like to do for most things is just kind of start top to bottom, right? So of course, again, we see the unknown sender. We also see an urgent attention grabbing subject because, hey, we pause your credit, right? That could be something that could drastically affect you, especially if that's your only credit card and you rely on that. Of course, there's a generic greeting. If this was something that was supposed to be directed to you, wouldn't you imagine it would have your name, right? Of course, there is a suspicious link, right? If it's American Express, right? American Express show is sending from a domain that says at email.com, that already doesn't match up. There are also saying a website Amex45, excuse me, that doesn't match up as well because likely if you Google American Express, it's going to go take you to americanexpress.com. And we still see some spelling and grammatical errors. Again, like at the very top where it said express is spelled incorrectly and some extra periods here. And then typically it'll end with this vague or generic signature. So these are common things that we typically see, but now with the adoption of AI, this has kind of like made some of these red flags less reliable to help identify such as spelling and grammar issues. But also at the same time, it's kind of like transformed some of these AI phishing emails, mainly because it's like, well, it also had the potential to remove the language barrier, right? Somebody that's writing something in Portuguese could get this automatically translated into English and it'd be just as good as it was in the Portuguese language, just as an example. Now, AI has also helped them craft more convincing stories, as well as kind of like mimicking the brand likeness to make it more difficult to determine that legitimacy. So if you feel like you receive something that's committing to an action again for money, like wire instructions, for information, sensitive information like your password or social security number, take pause before sharing that info. It'll only be a minor inconvenience in time.
Yeah, Norman, I think I've gotten every one of these different examples in my time, if that's email or text or phone call. And I think we really need to, like you said, take a pause. And what I've done even as well is if I see something come from Netflix or let's say UPS that looks maybe confusing to me, I'll actually go onto my app or I'll go online and log into my actual profile. I'll find that customer service phone number on that specific app or website and maybe give them a call if I'm suspicious. Be like, hey, I got this, it says, I need to pay $100 for my subscription. Is that accurate? So again, just taking a step back, it's okay to be suspicious. Um, I would also say the power of taking a pause is also really beneficial because I've also been seeing too in the line of business that those emails have become so perfect that actually some businesses are purposely doing grammatical errors to prove that it's not AI. So again, just showing, it's okay to look into it a little more. It's okay to log on to your account. Just make sure at the end of the day that it is accurate. So a lot of this is going to be alarming that you see, hey, do this now or else. It's okay to, pause for a second.
Yeah, that's a great call out. I mean, here at the text message, right, this example, you can kind of see that yes, it's not a UPS.com type of address, but when it comes to the Netflix or this Microsoft, right, now it's hiding behind something. You can't tell easily what that link is. So yeah, take that time, go log into that account directly, and then you'll know whether or not these are valid or legitimate. Now, this is actually a phishing text that I got. So, kind of like this one is not necessarily branded with the UPS logo, but you can still see that, hey, it tries to take its likeness. So smishing, right, is a malicious text being sent to everybody's device. And so the point of it is really, it's like, well, again, top down, we're noticing, hey, the number doesn't necessarily come from a number that's known. In this case, it's a +63 number. That's an international number. Of course, that's not within the US or the States, right? But also, well, it can also assume itself in a short code mass marketing number. And so that could be like a 5 or 6 digit number. You want to validate that with the vendor to see whether or not that's a legitimate sending number, if that is the case, right? We also see this in this particular case, a text message impersonating the likeness of UPS. And so it's like, or some type of other legitimate business. It doesn't really matter. It's like, insert blank here. That's kind of like what they're going to try to do. As you can kind of see if you read through it, hey, there's going to see some action that they want you to perform. Maybe there's some monetary penalty, but it's like, well, if I don't get my package, how am I going to get it? Well, I probably have to follow these instructions, right? And that's kind of odd that yes, I was expecting a package, but it requires me to sign it. Why are they doing it this way, right? You'll also see that they have a link to a malicious website. Again, it's at ups.com at, and then the rest of this weird ending of a website, definitely not ups.com. But also at the same time, it's asking you to respond. And so sometimes it's like we have like smishing kind of protections on our devices, especially when it comes from an unknown sender, that it doesn't always show us a link or allow us to click on it. Unless in this case, hey, if we reply with a Y, now this number becomes a trusted number in a sense, because now we're interacting with it. We close out of it, we go back in, now we can actually click on that link. That's exactly what they want you to do. But at the same time too, now it tells them, hey, there's a person behind that phone number. But at the end of the day, for these, just best to ignore them and just block the sender. Now, when it comes to phishing, now instead of like email or text, this is where you could get a pre-recorded call or maybe even a real call. This is kind of like where their actors kind of get creative. Again, they use social engineering to manipulate the human emotions, so the victims can commit to an action that's not in their best interest. And normally it starts off as an unsolicited call. Maybe it's from somebody that's impersonating some authority figure or a trusted person, right? A trusted a family member, for example. Next, it's typically urgent. It's typically like an emergency type of scenario, where this is kind of like where they start telling the story of pretexting, where the attacker fabricates a believable scenario, convincing you or making you compelled to take some type of action. And then at the very end, the goal is, hey, you provide them with some very valuable information, or you pay some ransom, you pay some litigation fees or whatever it is. Boom, there you go, right? So some general tips to consider when we're talking about phishing is really, if you get a call, especially from an unsolicited, unknown caller, let it go to voicemail, right? You can always respond back, or you can always take that quote unquote vendor call and call back a legitimate number from a point of contact you already know. And if they ask you, hey, can you verify some information? Because it's a cold call, I probably wouldn't. Again, unless you already expected it, the best way is like, hey, let me get your number, let me track you down and make sure this call is legitimate. Don't go ahead and just automatically provide your social security number to them. If there's
And
urgency, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just saying, yeah, Norman, is it true what we're seeing is people are, even with the use of AI, like mimicking those voices of people, or maybe going into a situation where, hey, and I'll give you an example. In my case, my grandma, she only goes by Nanny in our family. So when somebody calls and they say, hey, grandma, it's your grandson, I need money, she knows that it's not, me, because I call her Nanny. Is this true that maybe they're just mimicking those people?
Oh yeah, you'll be surprised. This is kind of like where they get into like the AI voice cloning thing, right?
Yeah.
All they need is like a small little snippet, and then they can basically kind of like use those sound bites to kind of create, hey, this is Ethan and speaking in his voice, maybe not the same mannerisms, but still it'll sound convincing enough that you might want to take action. That is actually something that has been brought up last year. There's a big thing called the grandparent scam. You probably all heard of it at least once, where scammers are again using public sources of information such as social media or information from data breaches to kind of like get a profile, right? And basically, they then concoct these really convincible stories that praise on these grandparents because, like, who doesn't love their grandparents, and the grandparents, who doesn't love their grandkids, right? Praise on their worst fears. So again, it's this unsolicited call. The scammers impersonate the grandchild or some close relative that they're in a crisis situation, asking for immediate financial assistance. Sometimes what they'll do is even spoof the caller ID. So it's like, like at least for your number, Ethan, like maybe I just copy and paste your caller ID information. So when I'm calling, it looks just like I'm calling from your cell phone. So these things are possible, right? Again, they'll
Wow.
go ahead and take advantage of the emotional roller coaster. They'll go ahead, push to urgency, again, pushing to action to ask for some money. And then at the end of the day, when they say, hey, please don't let mom and dad know, right? These are kind of things like the attackers don't want you to do or share with other people because that's what reduces the potential of their scam from succeeding. So yeah, if you ever feel like you come across a situation, right, something this, and you feel like you want to have a more sensitive conversation, if you haven't, kind of like what Ethan said at the top of the call, set up a passcode or passphrase with the Financial Freedom team. That way it can help verify, right, whether or not you're actually talking to them, and they can verify if they're actually talking to you.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there are a ton of different scams out there. But if you learn to take that 9-second pause and review these different flags, uh, you should be good to go, right? At least for most scams, depending on how sophisticated they get. So just generally speaking, we want to make sure that we don't click on those links or download only any open files for unknown sources. Large companies like Intel, HP, Dell, whatever, right? They're not going to directly call you or email you unless you already are conducting some type of business with them, right? Also, at the same time, though, I always recommend always verify, verify, verify before doing anything you might regret. It might take you a little bit of time, right? But that peace of mind can make a world of a difference, right? Because when you give away that sensitive information, you verify it, it's kind of like it's already given away, right? So just kind of take a pause before you actually commit the action. When it comes to securing your accounts, as I mentioned, kind of like before, things were much simpler, right? And we just had a separate key for everything. Honestly, that's exactly what a password is to all your accounts. So with your accounts, this is where we highly recommend password complexity, and we emphasize on length. And I'll explain a little bit more later. And instead of conventional dictionary words, use passphrases or mnemonics that helps you create random but meaningful passwords. At least for myself, like my memory is not that great. If I had 100, 200, 300 different accounts, it's going to be near impossible to memorize all of these passwords if I made them 15 plus characters or more, right? So this is kind of like where I recommend a password manager. Password manager are really kind of like digital notebooks in a sense that helps you manage those credentials. The difference is that compared to a paper notebook is really, well, now it's encrypted. Now it's redundant. So, because it's in the cloud, I'm able to access them and not have to worry too much about natural disasters, page getting ripped out, wet, or whatever that is, right? But also at the same time, I'm able to use the password manager online to determine risk of whether or not the password is weak, whether the password's at risk because it's found on the dark web, or maybe there's a risk because, well, it's been reused or recycled, right? These telltale signs kind of help us get away from those bad password practices. Um, at least if you're considering adopting a password manager, I would just say make sure to do your research to ensure that they're a secure and stable vendor. And make sure to turn on multi-factor authentication as well. For those that are not using password manager, like here are some tips to just kind of again re-emphasize how to create good passwords that can withstand some test of time, right? Generally speaking, we always recommend against not using personal details or personal information. Most of us, like if we kind of think about like, hey, if our passwords contain names and birth dates, anniversaries, our pets' names, our children's names, so on and so forth, like these are very common. And if this information, again, is publicly available, I can get that. I can kind of start guessing your passwords. If your passwords are dictionary words, definitely don't reuse those passwords. I can say, hey, I change my password every 30 days, but it's January 2026, February 2026, so on and so forth. that puts you in a bind because these are really weak passwords that many people use. Now the bad actors actually have word lists and programs that are automated to just test those words to crack your passwords, right? And then lastly, multi-factor authentication, which I'll cover shortly as well. Now, kind of coming back to the point of emphasizing length in your password, this table best illustrates how that length, also paired with that complexity, then makes it more difficult for the threat actors to guess your password. This also easily demonstrates too how password managers then could help reduce the likelihood of account compromise. So a password manager, if I say, hey, all my other accounts that I don't really care for, let's go ahead and auto-generate passwords. Then those passwords are all probably unique and complex, right? Maybe then I just use the password manager to do that. I just have maybe 5 or 10 passwords that I remember that are 15 character plus. Now all my passwords are unique. I don't have to worry about one password or one account being breached and then all the other subsequent accounts being at risk or vulnerable, right? So at least as a attacker mindset, that's kind of like how I think of passwords. It's at the end of the day a cat and mouse game where it's a combination of timing as well as like creating new ways to secure accounts to keep up with that newer technology and creating passwords that are more complex than just dictionary words. Now, for those that aren't familiar with multi-factor authentication stands for, or MFA, that stands for MFA or multi-factor authentication. And when attempting to log into the account, the process requires a second form of verification to gain access.
So Norman, you're just saying this is another layer of security, just not replacing any type of passwords or anything like that. Is that right?
Correct. And so what you're kind of thinking it as like there was a gate in front of your door and then there's your door, right? And
Right.
so the idea is that, hey, now I could potentially use this as a secondary form of alert even, right? If somebody's trying to access your account. It's going to slow down the bad actor at the end of the day.
Hmm.
So again, if your account, let's just say your password was known and you had multi-factor authentication enabled, that is going to basically prevent the bad actor from potentially getting in. By getting that notification, if not once or twice, a couple times, that's when I would even consider resetting the password, just as that could be potentially like, hey, my password is out in the dark web somewhere. Maybe it was too easy to guess. They got in or they're trying to get in. Let's go ahead and change that, right? Sometimes you have also probably heard the word 2FA or two-factor authentication. That is just kind of like in all of its definition is just a requiring a second form of authentication, but multi-factor authentication encompasses 2FA. So when we talk about multi-factor authentication, just like what you see there, from top to bottom, top being the weakest, bottom being the strongest, this is kind of like where we're talking about something that you know. So we already entered the password, right? Something that you have is the phone. So maybe you get an email, maybe you get a text message, or you get a call for that one-time passcode. Maybe you can use the authenticator app, such as Microsoft Authenticator, Google Duo. Those are some examples. Or hey, maybe I use my face or my fingerprint to authenticate in. So that's something that you have, right? Or something that you know, or something that you have, and then something you are, sorry, is that fingerprint and that facial recognition at the end there.
Yeah,
Um,
when I think about this too, Norman, I think kind of what you've been explaining throughout this time is things are updating, things are changing. While this may seem new, multi-factor authentication might be different than what we have, or, authenticator apps, it's also changing with the times of people are getting into these accounts easier, right? You're not going to
correct.
put a rubber band on your doorknob or your lock. That's not going to be your lock for your home. You need to also update with those times, and these are the tools that can do so. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, there are other people that are also doing like pass keys and more passwordless, phishing resistant types of authentication techniques to basically make it so it's like, hey, I can easily verify your identity,
Mm,
right? Make it more difficult for somebody to be tricked into visiting login pages, right? That is not necessarily just a imposter page and not a real page.
Mm.
Easy, great site to check out is Have I Been Pwned? Instead of owned, OWNED, it's PWNED, haveibeenpwned.com. And pwn is just basically a word that's like slang for defeated, dominating, owning opponent. This site essentially is a site that has aggregated data from past data breaches to really help victims learn of compromised accounts and take action before the bad actors potentially gain access. So if you go to this site, it allows you to enter your email address as well as some passwords to determine if they've been found in past data breaches. And the email address can indicate which service providers were affected. When it comes to protecting those devices, ransomware has become more rampant, and an easy way to protect them is really having a backup plan. So backing up phones, computer data, so on and so forth, to the cloud, or even local storage, such as that USB hard drive, to be kept offline, is recommended. So in that way, to protect against your most precious files. Ransomware scenarios, we always don't recommend. We kind of follow the FBI guidelines. I'm not recommending to pay those cyber criminals. They're already criminals already. Can you trust them to go ahead and delete or remove the information after you pay them? Likely not, right? So the recommendation then says like, well, we always then recommend to reach out to your local FBI field office and law enforcement if that ever does occur. A lot of malware does rely on vulnerabilities related to outdated computers. So also making sure to maintain operating system and third-party software updates on your device. If they are no longer being supported, that's kind of like where we would say, go ahead and uninstall it, and just to close any vulnerability gaps there. Now, this is a question that we get often a lot. Well, what if I am a victim? Like, what in the moment, what should I do? And this is kind of like a general what we recommend is to really notify your LPL advisor. Part of it is because we just don't know to what extent that you and your accounts are affected, especially if it comes to email compromise. Informing your financial advisor of the suspicious activity or communications, we can go ahead and kind of put some protections in place on the LPL side to protect your accounts. We also then recommend to contact a IT professional to help you scan the computer, to help you identify if there's any suspicious software that's been installed compared to previously, or it's kind of like things that like, hey, these are all kind of like red flag type of programs. They can go ahead and kind of take a look at that and see if that's something that needs to be taken care of. When it comes to acting immediately, definitely because of that situation, that scenario, that's when we would go ahead and say, hey, make sure to change your passwords on a different device, as well as enabling multi-factor authentication on all your most sensitive accounts, and disconnecting that affected device from the internet, not just to prevent malware spread, but also to prevent bad actors from trying to remote into your device.
Yeah, you say act immediately here, Norman. Are you referring to if I was targeted or if I actually shared that sensitive information with people?
I think it's a little bit of both, right?
Okay.
Because it's like, well, of course, depending on a case-by-case scenario, if you become a target, it doesn't mean that it's like that's a one-time deal. It could be more often. So this is kind of like leading into like number 4, right? Monitoring your accounts and setting up alerts. So even before all of these things occur, hopefully you have like things in place to kind of protect the accounts, right? If there's something that's accidentally charged or was maliciously charged, right? Because of stolen credit card information, for example. But also it's like, well, what if there are new lines of credit being opened? That means sensitive data, identity theft could already be occurring. You're kind of like jumping in front of it before even kind of like waiting and reacting, right?
Okay.
Great question.
Hmm.
Another question that we get too is like, what about identity theft protection services like CreditWise, LifeLock, Experian, right? At the end of the day, we always just say, hey, make sure to conduct your due diligence on these providers. It is just a kind of alert notification type of service. I think LifeLock might be the only exception here. If you pay a little bit more, if you are implicated in a identity theft type of scenario, they kind of handhold and walk you through that process of how to recover your identity. But again, it's a subscription service there. Um, I think the main difference that if you were to go to the Have I Been Pwned website versus this is that, well, these can also actively monitor, like, let's just say other credit card numbers that you enter into these services, social security numbers, driver's license, different email addresses, et cetera, et cetera. Some free items that you can do and use today, credit monitoring and freezing. So you can always go and request free reports annually. Make sure to check your reports and make sure there's no suspicious lines of credit. And if there's anything that you're not sure of, that's kind of like when you should start reaching out to those credit bureaus. So in that way, you can go ahead and remediate or fix your lines of credit because that's important to us. An easy thing that you can do that's free again is freezing your credit or even turning on fraud alerts on your accounts for the 3 different credit bureaus. You just have to reach out to each one of those. So lastly, right, if there was, I know this is a lot of information, but if there are things that, if there's the 5 takeaways, these are kind of be the takeaways here, okay? Know that LPL is always committed to supporting not just your advisor, but yourselves as the clients and protecting your information, your assets. So again, if you do come across any suspicious activity, please let your office know. We'll work with them. We'll do our best to figure out what's going on there. Social engineering attacks are there to really, again, take advantage of human emotion and human flaws, right? So make sure to, again, those that take 9, take 9, take pause, slide. Make sure to kind of review those. That's going to be your key to identifying most suspicious activity. Make sure to, again, don't click on any links, don't open attachments, don't answer any calls from unknown sources. Let them go to voicemail. Inaction doesn't mean that you don't care. It's just inaction is better than action when, especially if it could be malicious. When it comes to like number 4, be a cyber hero, spread awareness. This is kind of like where I think like sharing is caring. So, and like sharing that information, bringing awareness to other people is great. So in that way we can rely on each other and not trying to navigate this journey together.
Yeah, when I think of that one too, Norman, I think about like my family. If I was to get a text or an email, I'm going to, if it's my wife, just be like, does this look a little suspicious? What do you think of this? And then, reaching out to my family and saying, hey, this is a common scam that's going on right now, just so you guys know, so you don't fall into that trap. And I would also say too, for our clients, if you guys get any of that, send it our way. That gives us makes us be informed about what's going on, and then it helps the community at large. So, spread that awareness, like you said, Norman. It helps a lot of people that maybe you didn't know you could help.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then lastly, again, just like what I said in the last slide, right? Preparation is key. So monitoring those counts, monitoring those lines of credit, enabling multi-factor authentication, setting those recovery steps, going to be kind of like one of your preparation steps to help protect you and your sensitive information and your loved ones. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much to Norman for, talking about this, spreading awareness, as we said, just an amazing piece of education today. So I really just want to thank you, Norman. So if we do have individuals who aren't clients of ours, you can text our number, text secure to that number, and we can send you guys a calendar link to get scheduled just to essentially help you with anything in your financial life. However, if we do have some of our clients on the line, you can do the same exact thing, text secure, or just text us in general and be like, hey, I don't know if I have a trusted contact on file. Let me schedule a meeting with my advisor. We can definitely go ahead and do that for you. So, yeah. And again, if we are going to be trying to answer some questions. I know we kind of slotted for an hour. We want to be respectful of time. Text that number too if you guys have any questions. We'll try to answer those. So a little about LPL Financial. Norman, you did a great job at the beginning, kind of explaining. But if you guys are curious, they are our broker dealer, kind of the back end support, as we like to say. Even just being able to rely on you today to spread this education is fantastic. So if you're curious, a little information here, and then as well on the next slide, you'll see some disclosures. If you really want to read the fine print, you can take a picture. When we send the replay out, you'll be able to see these. So again, thank you so much for being here. We will stick on, stay on for a couple more minutes if any questions come in. Another reminder, we will be sending a replay out if you missed anything. We do not expect you to fully understand everything that was talked about. And if you just want to send that to somebody else that you know that could be beneficial for, please do so. So we're happy to help. We'll check if any questions come in. A couple, kind of just minutes here. We'll stay on. So we did have a question that came in saying if we can provide slide printouts. Yes, absolutely. So this is client facing for you. We can absolutely, if you text us or email us, we will send you a PDF, or we can FedEx you a printout of today's slides. We can absolutely do that. So just let us know your information, who you are, things like that. I don't see any other questions coming in, Norman. It sounds like you answered it all. So great job there. Again, we want to thank you for your partnership. And again, what a wonderful time to just talk about this. I know it's definitely on the forefront of a lot of our retirees right now. They're getting a lot of different things that may be confusing. So again, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to the team as well. We can always follow up offline. Not a big deal.
All righty. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.